Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the channel. I am so incredibly happy to have you here for Scary Tales Volume 2. After the amazing feedback on our first volume, I spent weeks digging through archives and listener submissions to find the most intriguing, hair-raising stories just for you. We're going to keep things conversational and cozy, even if the stories themselves are a bit on the spooky side. So find a comfortable spot, maybe grab a warm drink, and let's settle in. Today's journey takes us from the depths of ancient forests to the silent hallways of forgotten homes. I've always found that the best stories are the ones that feel just plausible enough to be true, and tonight's selection definitely fits that bill. Let's start our first tale, shall we? Our first story begins in the whispering woods of the Pacific Northwest. Local hikers often speak of a specific trail that seems to go on and forever, even though the map says it's only a 3-mile loop. Imagine walking through towering pines where the light barely touches the forest floor. Our protagonist, a seasoned backpacker named Elias, noticed something strange during his last solo trip. The birds stopped singing entirely, and the wind seemed to carry the sound of rhythmic breathing. It wasn't a predator, he said, but something much larger and much slower. He described the air becoming thick, almost like walking through water, and the sensation of being watched by something hiding just behind the ancient trunks. It's a feeling many of us have had in the wild, but for Elias, it was about to become very real. As Elias continued, he found a circle of stones that wasn't on any geological survey. The stones were perfectly smooth, as if polished by centuries of touch, yet they were cold as ice despite the summer heat. He told me that when he stepped into the center of that circle, the whispers started. They weren't in a language he recognized, but they felt familiar, like a half-remembered lullaby from childhood. He felt a sudden, overwhelming urge to just sit down and stay there forever. It was a magnetic pull, a gentle persuasion from the forest itself. He had to physically shake himself to regain focus, realizing his compass was spinning wildly, and the sun had dropped far lower than it should have in just 10 minutes of walking. This is where the line between nature and the supernatural begins to blur, don't you think? Elias eventually broke into a run, feeling the breathing sound grow louder and closer behind him. He didn't look back until he reached the trailhead parking lot, where his car sat alone under a flickering street lamp. When he checked his watch, 4 hours had passed, though he felt he'd only been running for 5 minutes. Even more unsettling, when he got home, he found a small, smooth gray stone inside his sealed backpack, the exact same kind from the circle in the woods. He still has that stone today, tucked away in a drawer, though he says he sometimes hears it vibrating against the wood at night. It's a chilling reminder that sometimes, when we visit nature, a little bit of it decides to follow us home, whether we want it to or not. Wasn't that a fascinating start? I love stories that involve missing time. There's something so naturally terrifying about losing control of your own perception. But before we move on to our next tale, I want to take a moment to thank you all for being part of this community. Your comments and theories on the last video were absolutely brilliant, and they really helped me decide which legends to research next. It's amazing how many of these tales have variations across different cultures. Whether it's the hidden people of Iceland or the spirits of the Appalachian Trail, the core human fear of the unknown remains the same. Now let's transition from the wild outdoors to something a bit more architectural. Our next story involves a place that was built to be a sanctuary, but ended up becoming a prison of memories. Blackwood Manor has stood on the edge of a cliff for over a century. It's a beautiful, decaying piece of Gothic history that has seen its fair share of tragedy. The story goes that the original owner, a clockmaker, became obsessed with capturing time itself. He filled every room with grandfather clocks, pocket watches, and mechanical tickers. When he passed away, the house was left to his niece, who soon realized that the clocks didn't just tell the time, they dictated the atmosphere of the house. People who visited reported that the ticking would sync up with their heartbeats, creating a physical sensation of anxiety. It's a classic haunting, but with a very specific rhythmic twist that makes the hair on the back of your neck stand up just thinking about it. One night, the niece was walking through the grand library when all the clocks stopped simultaneously. The silence was described as deafening, a heavy weight that pressed against her ears. Then, slowly, they all began to tick backward. She watched as the shadows on the floor moved in reverse, and the candles that had burned down to stubs began to grow tall again. It was as if the house was rewinding itself to a specific point in history. She saw a figure reflected in the glass of a clock face, the clockmaker himself, looking younger and more vibrant, working at his desk. But when she turned around, the room was empty. The house wasn't just haunted by a ghost. It was haunted by a loop in time, a moment that refused to be forgotten or erased. She eventually fled the manor, unable to handle the psychological toll of living in a place where the present was constantly being overwritten by the past. To this day, hikers near the cliff report hearing a thunderous ticking sound coming from the abandoned structure on the anniversary of the clockmaker's death. Some even claim to see the lights in the windows flickering in a strange Morse code-like pattern. It makes you wonder if time is really as linear as we think it is, or if certain emotions can leave a permanent dent in the fabric of a place. Blackwood Manor remains a silent sentinel, guarding secrets that were never meant to be uncovered by the living. It's a beautiful tragedy, wrapped in a mystery that time forgot. Our final story for this volume comes from a security guard named Marcus, who worked the graveyard shift at a high-end corporate museum. This wasn't a place of old relics, but of modern art and expensive prototypes. Marcus was a skeptic through and through. He didn't believe in ghosts or ghouls. He liked the quiet of the night and the steady pay. However, his perspective changed during a routine patrol on the third floor. He noticed a statue that seemed to change its posture every time he looked away. Initially, he laughed it off as a trick of the light or his own tired eyes. But then he checked the security monitors and realized the statue wasn't moving. It was the reflection in the polished marble floor that was doing something different than the object itself. In the reflection, the statue was reaching out toward the camera. On the pedestal, it remained perfectly still. Marcus told me he stood there for 10 minutes, frozen in place, watching the screen. He saw his own reflection walk past the camera on the monitor, even though he was standing completely still in the real world. It was a terrifying disconnect between reality and the digital image. He felt a sudden chill, a localized drop in temperature that made his breath visible in the air. The reflection of Marcus turned its head on the screen and looked directly into the camera lens, smiling a wide, unnatural smile that didn't match Marcus's own expression of terror. He knew then that he wasn't looking at a ghost, but perhaps a glimpse into a parallel dimension where things were slightly off. Marcus quit the next morning. He didn't even wait for his shift to end. He just left his badge on the desk and walked out into the sunrise. He told the supervisor he had a family emergency, but the truth was he couldn't bear to be around mirrors or reflective surfaces for weeks afterward. He started covering the mirrors in his house with sheets. He said the most haunting part wasn't the reflection itself, but the realization that something was living in the spaces between what we see and what actually exists. It's a reminder that even in our modern, well-lit world, there are corners where the logic of science fails, and the ancient fears of our ancestors take hold. Have you ever seen something in a mirror that didn't quite match up? I hope these stories have given you a little something to think about tonight, whether it's the strange stones in the woods, the ticking clocks of Blackwood, or the reflections in a corporate museum. The world is full of wonders and terrors that defy explanation. I want to thank you so much for spending your time with me today. It really means a lot to share these moments of mystery with such an engaged and thoughtful audience. We have so much more planned for this series, and I can't wait to hear your thoughts on which story was your favorite. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more updates. It really helps the channel grow and allows me to keep bringing these tales to life. Stay curious, stay safe, and as always, keep your eyes open for the unexplained. I'll see you in the next volume. Good night, everyone.